Hello everyone, today's video is a follow-up to the Viaduct drawing video that I posted a few days ago. If you haven't watched that, go watch that now using the link in the video description below. It will give you context to what you're about to watch. Today I want to talk about my thought process when it comes to sketching this complicated scene. And if you want to follow along and learn, you can download the reference photo. The link is also in the video description below. This photo is actually two photos stitched together. That's why there are some weird cutouts at the corners and the edges. Alright, when I look at this photo, or when I look at the scene itself, I can see that it's a very wide scene. The structures are huge. There are two large trees here, and this viaduct, this is gigantic. There is also a lot of perspective going on. There is this road that leads to this vanishing point somewhere here, and these diagonal lines, they are also sort of pointing to somewhere here because there's a vanishing point here. And we have this support for the viaducts. They are also in perspective. And there is a lot of details going on in the background, in the foreground, some cars. Basically, there's a lot going on. So when it comes to tackling this sort of scene, I usually spend a few minutes on location just thinking about how it would fit onto the page. The first thing I need to consider is, what do I want to show in my sketch? What are the things I want to draw? And after I've decided, then I will think about how I can fit those elements in the sketch. So for this particular example, I wanted to fit the two trees in my sketch. They are the tallest element in the scene. So if I am able to fit the tallest element, all the other elements which are shorter, more compressed, they will fit into the sketch with no problems at all. The next thing to do is to get some measurements. It's important to get accurate measurements because if you get wrong measurements, it's going to obviously affect your sketch. And if your proportions are off, you may not be able to fit everything you want to draw on your page. So when I am drawing on location, sometimes I will use either my pencil or my pen. I will stretch out my arm, lock my elbows, and get some measurements. So in this case, I may use, for example here, a pen to measure the height of the tree. I will see where the leaves intersect the tree trunk, and it seems like it's at the halfway point here. And for the other tree, it's about the same height or a bit shorter compared to this tree here. And the leaves intersect the tree trunk at about 2/3, about this point here. And I need to measure the distance between these two trees. So let me just use my pencil here. So let's say this is the height of the tree. I can turn this like this, and we can see that the height of the tree is exactly the same as the distance between these two trees. So when I draw the tree later on, I need to leave enough space here. And this space here, this is about half a tree. By the way, if you are measuring objects that are really large and your pencil or pen is too short, you can use your sketchbook to measure as well. So sometimes I would just open up my sketchbook like this and put it in front of me. Once again, stretch out my arm, lock my elbows, and put this in front of me. So this would be 1 unit, this would be half a unit, and I will use half the page to measure other things as well. So if it's a very tall tree, I may use my sketchbook vertically like this. If it's a very wide scene, I will use the sketchbook horizontally as some sort of ruler. For this tutorial, I will be using half the page. So I'm going to use a pencil line to divide the page here. I'm going to put the reference photo up there for you. Okay, so let's draw the tallest or the largest element first, and that's the tree in the center, and it's here. So I'm going to draw it right here. This is not going to be a very detailed sketch. I just want to talk about my thought process. So this is the tree, and this is 1 unit, and there's another unit right here. It goes all the way down. That's the tree trunk, and this is the tree trunk that goes to the right side. And the leaves here, they intersect this tree trunk here a bit lower. So this is one tree, and remember earlier we took some measurements. This height here it's about the same as the distance between these two trees, so I think it's actually more accurate to use a pencil or a ruler or anything that is not flexible. If I use my hand to measure like this, when I move it like this, I mean you can see my fingers may actually move, so it's not that accurate. So sometimes it's more accurate to use something that is inflexible. So this is just nice, my pencil, exactly the height of the tree. So for the other tree here, it's like this. And the leaves, they intersect much lower compared to this point here. So the leaves intersect here, and this is the tree. Okay, I need to leave some space below because we can see some parts of the road below. All right, next thing I want to do is to draw the next longest line, and that is this viaduct, the topmost line, the outer edge of that viaduct. And I will look at where the viaduct intersects this tree. It actually intersects this tree right here in the middle, right here. And when it goes to the right side, it will intersect the tree right here, somewhere here. So when I draw, I just need to join the lines together. The line is going to be a curve. If you observe from location, if you look from the left to the right, if you keep using your pen to do measurements, you will notice that the angle will be something like this, and then it will become more horizontal, and as it moves to the right side, it will start to tilt down again. And sometimes you can see a little bit of the viaduct behind the tree, so you may want to draw that line behind the tree. And then this viaduct continues here. So this viaduct goes all the way here and comes here, goes to the right side like this. All right, next I'm going to measure the top of the viaduct to the bottom of the viaduct. Or maybe I should, maybe I should add the bottom first since I have the top now. Let me just draw the bottom here. I need to place the vanishing point. So next step, I'm going to find the vanishing point. Finding the vanishing point is actually quite easy because we have a lot of diagonal lines to help us. So you see this diagonal line here? This points down. You see the roads, they are pointing somewhere. They are pointing to the vanishing point, which is around here. And most of these lines, they are pointing, and even this line here, they are all pointing here. So the vanishing point seems to be somewhere around here. It's not right. Let me zoom in for you. It is not at the bottom of the tree. It is somewhere here. All right. So we use the tree as a measurement. The vanishing point is slightly further up. So it's here. And now we can, with the vanishing point, we can actually draw the road if you want to. So we have the road here that starts here and goes all the way to the vanishing point. And I also want to draw this line here. If you want to be more accurate, again, you can use the reference photo and measure. So now I'm actually using my pen to measure the angle just to get it right. This line will also point to the vanishing point. There is a walkway here, a walking path. And yeah, so this is basically the road. And now with the road drawn, I can draw the bottom of the viaduct. Now the bottom of the viaduct, I can see that it's sort of, I'm using the tree here again. The viaduct passes through the tree, behind the tree here. So this is where the viaduct is going to be. And there is this support here. So I need to know where that support starts, and I need to do some measurements again. So let's measure it. I'm talking about this support here, so let's measure it. Okay, so it's about, I would say, maybe, let's say this is 5 units. This would be 1 unit, 2 units, 3 units, 4 units, 5 units. So this would be about 2 units. So it would stop around here, which is approximately what I have here. Now, if you want to be more careful, you can use a pencil to draw out those lines first. And the support, the legs for the support, they are actually going to the vanishing point. So you may also want to draw that in. All right. So this is this is actually this viaduct. See? This is actually the top of this viaduct. I need to draw the bottom as well, which goes behind the tree, like this. And there's this opening here. This is the small piece of sky. It's very small, it's like this. And this is the main viaduct. See this line here? It goes down like this. That's the main viaduct. So I want to just use my pencil to draw that. All right. Now for all the individual blocks here, you need to measure them properly so that you can get the correct measurement. The next thing I want to draw is this section here, this thing here. So that thing there, it's more towards the left side, and it's somewhere here like this. That's the vertical line. There's this line that points down to the vanishing point, and this line will go to the left side. There's this little extrusion here. This line here goes to the vanishing point, and this comes down here. And this will go to the right side like this. So this is the thickness at the top, and this is the railing. Right, so this will come down like this and goes to the right side. Now this line here, if you measure it, it doesn't go to the same vanishing point here. The vanishing point for this line is actually towards the right side. So when I draw, I need to make sure that it goes to the right side like this. So it's something like this. Goes up, and this is the bottom of that part there, and this will go to the right, the left side. Now these two legs here, see these two legs here, this leg is below this little triangle here, so you need to get that right. And this leg here, it's aligned horizontally to this part here. So it's here. It's very close to the triangle, and we need to draw that like this, and it goes down like this. Right. And the other leg here is towards the right side. Once again, if you have this leg here, you need to use this to get the position of this. You can also use this part here to get the position of this. So this is sort of like in the middle of this part here, and this part here, it's lower compared to this part here. So it's in the middle of here, comes down like this and like this. You also need to pay attention to the spacing between these two legs there. And once you have these two, you can draw the other legs as well. Now, the perspective for the legs, the perspective for these legs here, they also go to the right side here. So maybe I'll use a pencil again. Maybe the vanishing point's here. So if I draw something like this, I need to get those legs like this. You need to draw that viaduct as well first, so I'm going to draw that here. So now you see that there are a lot of horizontal lines going. You don't know which one is the bottom of the viaduct and which one is the side of the viaduct. So sometimes when I am drawing, I may give myself some hints. So this is the side of the viaduct. I may just introduce some lines on the side like this to give it texture, and for the bottom of the viaduct, I would draw it like this. So for this side here, this part here, this is the side of the viaduct. I would draw it like this. I will not put so many lines. I would probably just put a line here, maybe hidden by the tree here, just to let me know this surface area is facing the side. And this is the bottom of this viaduct, and we can draw the legs. So we have one leg here, two legs here, and this is the third leg here. And now with this 1, 2, and 3, we can draw to the bottom here. This part here will stop here before it turns here. I know it stops here because I'm using the tree trunk as a measurement tool. It doesn't go all the way down, it stops somewhere here. And this is like this is like this, and this is like this. Now my drawing is not that accurate. If you are drawing, you need to pay attention to the spacing between these legs. Right? And let me just draw. So all these lines will go to the perspective point, the vanishing point. Now there is a bus stop here. The bus stop is right here. I think it's to. All right, let's use the bottom. The bus stop is right here. It's right beneath here, the right edge of the bus stop. And the bus stop will stop here below this leg. So that's how we get the length of the bus stop. The stand for the bus stop. The people waiting at the bus stop, they are about half the height of the full bus stop, so the head will be here. And these are the people waiting there. This part here will come down. There are a lot of trees, a lot of vegetation behind, so I'm just going to use these squiggly lines to indicate those trees, the foliage behind. All right. And if you look at the photo, there are some road barriers, so I want to draw those road barriers in here. Now, the legs. This is not solid, you can see through the legs, so we need to draw those legs behind. And here as well, let's see, I think I left one leg out, is it? No, this is correct. I haven't drawn this viaduct yet, so let me just draw it all the way to the left side. And the leg seems to start here. Now, this part here, it's quite far in the background, so I am not able to see the lines of this structure quite clearly. What I mean is this line. I am not able to see this line from the photograph. But if you're on location drawing, your eyes will be sensitive enough to pick that up. If you want to draw some cars, you can do so. Cars are great. I mean, they give you a sense of size. I mean, my cars are not that good. There is some railing here as well. Railing here. And if you want to draw another railing, there are some railings here as well. The yellow railings. They start here. I'm using the bus stop as a measurement tool. They start here, go down, and this railing, this line here, will go to the vanishing point on the right side. Oh, by the way, I have a drawing tutorial course that I'm selling on Gumroad, which is on perspective. So if you want to learn more about perspective, you can maybe check out that course. So this is the railing. And this is the viaduct. The viaduct goes behind these legs. And there are legs that are going in this direction as well. You need to draw them in like this. Maybe this viaduct looks like this. oops, like this. So there's a lot of crisscrossing going on, so you need to, I mean, when drawing something like this, drawing skills is not as important as patience and observation skills, right? If you have patience, if you have very good observation skills, you will be able to draw something like this. So let me just follow through this line here. This will go here and will come out here. And more foliages, more trees in the background. Okay, so let me zoom out for you. So this is what we have so far. We have more details beneath the viaduct. You can draw them yourselves later on. So you see this space here? Now in this space here we have these things going on. So we just need to place those elements within this shape. There is a tree here. There is a tree here. There is a structure that tilts down to this direction here. Seems to have more trees here. And there are some corridors for this structure. Now if you look at the photo, in the very far background there are actually some very tall buildings right here. When I am drawing, I am not going to use, I can use ink to draw those buildings behind, but I will need to use very thin lines to draw those buildings behind. Or I may actually not draw them with lines, I would just paint them with watercolors without the outlines, because these buildings, because they are so far away, it's very difficult to see their edges, so I don't want them to have such strong contrast. Another tree here. Oh, there is actually another tree just behind this tree, so maybe I want to draw that in. Okay, there's a tree trunk here, so this is the tree. So this is what I have so far. Let's draw this line across. Now there's this lamppost that starts here, goes all the way up to this point here. I know it stops here because it stops right at the place where the leaves intersect the tree trunk. So this lamppost is very thin. I want to draw it thin. If it's even thinner, you can just represent it with one line. Now I'm drawing a very thin vertical rectangle. There's this light here. This is the viaduct that goes behind. And as this viaduct goes behind, it's starting to curve down. And here as well. Here as well, okay. Now, this is not shown in my original sketch, but there is actually another tree here, which is in the foreground. And I like things that are in the foreground because they overlap things that are in the background, so they give you a sense of depth. And this tree would block out the viaduct, so you don't have to draw the viaduct behind. All right. Now this line would go across like this. There is some construction going on here. The boarding for the construction would start here, it goes up slightly, and this line here, it would go, it's affected by the vanishing point that's here, so when you draw it, make sure to point the line to the vanishing point, so it goes like this, comes down like this. There are some extra barriers on the ground. There is a little opening. Now this opening, this width here, you see this width here and this width here, this is the width of the opening. And this boarding here would be higher compared to this point here. And this line here is affected by the vanishing point as well. So when you're drawing, make sure it's pointing to that vanishing point. And this boarding here, I think it's a bit, the width is a bit smaller compared to this, so make sure you get that right. And goes down. The bottom here, it's affected by the vanishing point as well. And we have some extra barriers here. And this will go to the right side. So this boarding will be behind this tree here, goes to the right side. And this will go here. So you see this tree here? This tree overlaps the boarding. It creates the sense of depth. So we know that this tree is in front of the boarding because of the intersection that happens here. And for this, I can see some support here as well. Now this support, it's a bit difficult for me to see from the photograph, so I'm just going to draw sort of like the shape of the support. And something like that. Okay, so let me just add the background here. There are a lot of trees in the background. So I want to add those in. And there's this support for this viaduct right at the end. So more trees here. And again, there are some tall buildings behind. Because they are further behind, I don't want them to have so much contrast. And this area here, this is where you can see through to the sky behind, and this is where that tall building is. We have some windows. You know what? I mean, all these vertical lines, again, they are very difficult for me to differentiate from one another. So I'm going to draw this very thin line above here, and I'm going to add some vertical lines. So these are the railings for this particular viaduct. And now when I look at all these horizontal lines, I know that this is a viaduct, and this section here, this is another piece of viaduct. So sometimes when I'm drawing, I have these little clues to help me get a sense of where I am and what I'm actually drawing. If you have watched the earlier video, you may have seen me using this Pentel color brush pen to basically do quick thumbnail studies. I want to study the light and shadow for this, which is why I use the brush pen with gray ink inside. What I'm trying to achieve by doing this is basically to try to replicate the contrast that I see. So when I paint with watercolor later on, I need to get the same level of contrast. So for example, you see this little white area here? This is the area where I can see through to the sky behind. So when I'm painting later on, I need to be sure that I leave this area white. And having the thumbnail sketch really helps. For the trees, they are actually black. So for areas that are not white, that are gray, areas that are not black, I would color with this brush pen. Also, if you notice from the photo or from the video that you may have watched, there is little horizontal light streaks on the ground. That's because between the viaducts, there are actually openings where the light can get through. So that's why we need to leave some horizontal lines on the ground, because they are, well, they'll show you light and shadow. And for the trees, I can use this darker brush pen to color it. It's actually not easy to color such large areas using that brush pen, so I'm going to switch over to using this brush where I can just dip into the ink. So for this particular sketch, I'm only using three tones: black, the mid-tone, gray, and white. This is the tree. For this particular tree trunk, it's much darker compared to this tree trunk here. So for this tree trunk, I'm just going to color it like that. And I noticed that I should have colored this viaduct here gray. I left that out. So let me color that. And there's this viaduct here. I need to make sure that this part here is white because it sees through to the back. And this is the viaduct as well. So I will just continue to color this. This support for the viaduct, this is also quite dark. And then I will color the trees in the background here. And here as well. Now for the bottom of the viaducts, I can see some intrusions into the bottom area. So you can actually draw them with pen and ink, but I'm lazy so I'm going to just use this brush to draw them. If you're drawing these shapes, make sure that the line goes to that diagonal line goes to the vanishing point. That's very important. That will give you the proper illusion of perspective. Let me touch up a bit here. And seems like there are more support behind. Alright, so this sketch is almost complete. For the last stage, I would usually look for inconsistencies. For example, this area here. Now this scene is backlit, so this boarding here, this is correctly shaded because this is in shadow, but here you can see that this is not shaded, so there is this inconsistency here, and I need to shade this. I also need to shade the bottom of the boarding, and some of these areas here I need to sort of cover it, but sometimes you can see through the tree into the sky, so you don't have to cover everything. You can leave little pockets of light. This tree here, this is actually backlit as well, so I need to color this too, like this. So this is backlit as well. This is backlit as well. I'm missing that street lamp there, so I'm going to draw that in. Spotted another inconsistency. This should be gray against black. There is another street lamp here that I forgot to draw. And this street lamp, this is to the left side of the street lamp here. So it's somewhere here. I need to draw it up like this. Goes all the way up. Sort of overlaps the tree, but in the photo it doesn't do that. So this is artistic impression. As long as it's the correct height, it's alright. And sometimes I like to add a little bit of texture to the ground, just to make the sketch look a bit, just to give it a bit more texture, to make it a bit more interesting. Now when you are drawing like this on watercolor, when you place your dots on watercolor, the dot is going to look larger than if you were to just draw it on paper. So sometimes I would just turn the fountain pen around to place those dots, to make those dots smaller. If the dots are too big, they are going to get unwanted attention. There are some street markings on the ground, and those street markings, they go to the vanishing point. So when you're drawing them, make sure to draw them to the vanishing point. So I'm going to draw some. So you see this action that I'm doing, I am actually pointing to the vanishing point. And the markings that are closer to you, they are going to be longer. The markings that are further away, they are going to be smaller or shorter. So this is the completed sketch drawn with pen and ink, colored with gray tones and black India ink. Let me show you the original sketch that was painted with watercolor. One point I want to highlight is the proportion. So just ignore this tree here. So these two trees help me frame the viaduct that is in between. So notice the height of the tree here. It's shorter compared to the height of the tree here. And because the proportion of this tree is smaller than this tree, everything in this sketch will look smaller compared to this sketch. So if you compare the viaduct, you can see that this viaduct is larger because, the tree was larger. And for this particular sketch, I did not crop off the top of the tree. You can crop off like this to make the viaduct even bigger, to let the viaduct take up the, basically take up the whole large portion of the scene. But here it is not cropped off, so it makes the scene look a bit bigger. But this particular sketch makes the viaduct look a bit bigger. Let me talk about the colors that I used for this. Someone was asking me the colors, what colors I used for this sketch. For the sky, I used French ultramarine mixed with cerulean blue. The paper was wet first before I painted with the color. That's why I was able to get the transition from the color to the white of the paper. Now, the sketchbook was also tilted, so the paint and the water was actually flowing in this direction. So you can see some streaking marks, but not that obvious. For the green, this is phthalo green blue shade mixed with a little bit of burnt sienna. For darker areas like this, I mixed it with quinacridone red. You can mix it with a cool red to get shades like this. For the tree trunk, this is burnt sienna with French ultramarine. And notice this color, it's similar to this color. So for this whole viaduct, I painted it with French ultramarine and burnt sienna. I can get grays with cerulean blue with burnt sienna as well, but for the shadow areas, for the much darker areas like this, I wanted to use French ultramarine because it's darker. It's a bit more difficult to get darker grays using cerulean blue. So here as well, French ultramarine with burnt sienna, and here as well, the shadows. For shadows, I think it's a common mistake for people to paint shadows that are a bit lighter. Shadows are usually much darker, so you need to paint them a bit darker. And also watercolor, when it dries a bit lighter, so it's best to paint a bit darker, at least for the shadow. Shadows have strong contrast. So we have this shadow contrasting with the white of the paper because some sunlight actually went between the viaducts. For the reds, it's quinacridone red and quinacridone red here as well. This yellow, this is lemon yellow mixed with a little bit of new gamboge. And some of the color actually, the paper is wet, it may actually blend with the greens behind. All this is actually a phthalo green. This is sap green. When I look at the reference photo, when I look at something like this, when I see the leaves here that are dark and close to black, the first thing that comes to my mind is I'm going to use phthalo green, because phthalo green is the green that can get you this sort of intensity. But for greens that are on the ground, like the grass, or greens that are under the sun, I would use sap green. Or I would mix the green with cool yellow to get those sunny green, you know. This crane here, or this construction vehicle, this is yellow. Lemon yellow mixed with new gamboge. If I were to use lemon yellow directly, that yellow is going to be too bright, too glaring, and too unnatural. So I mixed it with a little bit of new gamboge to sort of tone down the color to make it more natural, to make it look a little bit less out of place. Quinacridone red, more grays here. I also use some of the phthalo green to paint the concrete structure here because there are plants that grow on the side of all these concrete structures, so I wanted to sort of paint them a bit greenish. And these buildings that are in the far background, I painted them with grays as well. Actually, the same gray that I painted here. This building here as well, same gray. And for this viaduct, it was painted with several layers of watercolor. So I started with this layer, which is a very light wash of gray. And then I painted a second layer, which is this layer. You see this layer? These two are the same. And lastly, for the really dark areas that are close to black, I painted a third layer. This watercolor sketchbook, this is the Hanamule watercolor sketchbook, and it's able to handle 3 layers. 3 trunks here. Sometimes to add variation, when the wash is still wet, I would sort of dab in another color just to get those extra variations. For example, here you can see some yellow in the green. I don't make this sort of tutorials very often because it's quite time consuming to make. So most of the time on my YouTube channel it's just a time-lapse video. But for such full-length tutorial, you can usually find them on my Patreon page. I make the extra effort to make those videos for my patron. So if you want to check out more full-length tutorials, you can support me on Patreon. Patreon is a monthly subscription service where you can pledge a certain dollar amount to help out the artists that you like. So yeah, that's all for today's video. If you have any questions, let me know in the comment section. I hope this video is helpful. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video. Bye!